OC or OCO?
All right, guys. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Croco's Corner, as well as that Squad Nero podcast. You can find this video on both of those channels. As I always do, I want to just let you guys know again that we have a podcast that we typically do on Saturdays or excuse me, Sundays or Mondays. But currently, the gentlemen are at DreamCon. We plan to have a lot of stories, a lot of different things that are going to be coming from that. So please look forward to that in the near future. But yes, we won't be having a show today. So in response to that, I figured I would do a review on Sinners, something that I just saw. I'm very far behind from everyone else who has seen it on the podcast, but I figured that I would just come here and give you guys a quick little review on Sinners, and additionally I am going to add with that an even quicker review on Warfare, two movies that came out this year that I have some things to say. So I'm gonna just dive right into it. I really enjoy Sinners. I thought it was a great movie. It was very interesting. It kept my attention for the entire film. It was thrilling completely through. One of the things that I will say, just to kind of start here in regards to my review, um, it's a vampire movie, but I would still give it about an 8 out of 10 in regards to uniqueness, and that's kind of strange because a vampire movie having 8 out of 10 for uniqueness is like, how many vampire movies have we seen? We've seen so many different types of vampire movies. How can that even be possible? Um, but that's the thing. What I did love about this is that it was a vampire movie, but it also, in certain ways, kind of felt like a vampire musical. It wasn't to any extent a musical, but it had that sort of feel to it, which was kind of like an add-on. And I can't really think of any movie just off the top of my head. There maybe were some movies that came out in like the 90s or 80s or 70s or somewhere in that realm when there were like a big explosion of vampire movies, 60s even maybe. But there may have been another one that kind of featured somewhat as a musical, even though like a pseudo musical, I guess. There may have been a movie like that came out, but in terms, I'm not that old. I'm 29, but still, I'm relatively young in the grand scheme of cinema. So I could be very wrong in regards to if that has happened before. But as far as I know, and as far as my memory will allow for me to go, I can't remember a vampire movie that kind of featured that musical aspect. Anybody in the comments that is watching this movie that does know of any vampire movies that are um that feature a musical that's come out in the last 29 years, please let me know. So just drop a comment below if that is in fact the case. But again, I personally want to give it an 8 out of 10 in terms of uniqueness on that. Just on that alone, because it, again, for a vampire movie, um, we know, you could say, have we seen vampire movies that have had black cast? And yeah, that's been a thing that's happened before, especially during like the black exploitation. I think that's the correct way to say that. Apologize if I got that wrong. But during that era, kind of like, when you think of like Pam Grier and Shaft and just the different like movies that came out during that era, Blackula was one of them. So I can't even say that we haven't had like a black focused vampire movie before. We have. There's no uniqueness in regards to that. But again, and just the way that Ryan Coogler set up this movie, the way that it kind of has that pseudo musical feel to it, I personally very much just enjoyed that, and thought that was very clever how everything was done with that. Ryan Coogler has done a tremendous job at making sure that all of his movies kind of have a classic cinema feel to it, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody has had the opportunity to see any of Ryan Coogler's like behind the scenes, but he really is a huge like film nerd. And everyone that I feel like makes a movie says that they are like film nerds. And yes, you may have seen a lot of movies, but he actually feels like a film nerd. It's really nice when you can see that. Quentin Tarantino can be a very has well he's had points where he's had interviews and discussions where he's named some movies and certain things as inspiration that to me personally shows that this guy is really a film nerd when it goes beyond just the number of movies that you've seen, but the different elements within movies that you've seen. And for Ryan Coogler, that is absolutely felt throughout this entire movie. He's even said in some of the things behind the scenes, he said that it is something that he even got inspiration from movies like Puss in Boots that played a part in this series. So, I really tip my hat off into him just really maintaining the feel that you feel he would have gotten from watching a film as a kid and being able to translate that over into a newer generation. I tip my hat off to him for that. And I'm very thankful for that. One of the things that I really loved about the movie, probably the biggest thing that I personally loved about the movie, is the simple fact that it's thrilling throughout the entire movie. Like, I'm curious as to what is going to happen next. I know for a fact that there is a bunch of subtle things that I probably missed just in a one-time watch of it, but I do love that there never was a moment where I wasn't trying to investigate further and where the level of thrill and what's going to come next lost me. It always was there. It always maintained itself throughout the entire film. So I'm super, super happy about that. And just kind of going over some of the elements that were in the film, that we kind of touch on whenever we talk about movies. The story, again, love that they had a lot of subtle messages. One of the things that was cool was outside of the barn when Stack was with the head vampire, and they were saying how, ooh, sorry, do I really have to say spoiler alerts? All right. I'm going to throw yeet for a spoiler alert. Whenever you hear a yeet, in this case, that will be... Actually, no, let's do another one. Let's do an anime one. I think I got an anime sound bit here. Whenever you hear an anime sound bit, that's when I am going to be discussing spoilers. So... Oh, my God! Oh, I don't even know if that one came through. I don't even know if that sound came through. Whoops, sorry. But anyways, that was a JoJo sound bit. Spoiler alerts. Just period. Spoiler alerts. Spoiler alerts, okay? So one of the moments where the movie kind of discussed more subtlety is going to be outside the barn when Stack was with the head vampire, and they were saying how the person who sold him the barn was part of a I don't know if I could say this on video. I'm sorry. That's where I kind of got confused a little bit as to what I'm supposed to do here. An extremist group who happens to wear white hoods. He's told they were stacking the head vampire were talking to Smoke about this, and they were saying that they were gonna get them anyways. That was the plan. He just happened to, the head vampire just happened to bump into them. And, this was a tidbit that we were kind of like, wow, when you heard it, it's like, huh, but as if things weren't already bad, right? Then to kind of get some more bad news. What I loved is that kind of tied back at the end when we actually have to see Smoke deal with that same problem that we knew Smoke was gonna have to, or that we knew originally Smoke and Stack were gonna have to confront in the film. It's just really nice kind of having those little touches. Those touches remind me of again, Quentin Tarantino is the first one that kind of comes up to mind. You'll see moments like that where something that happens earlier in the film just kind of comes back around, and just how smooth that process is done. Again, my hat's off to Ryan Coogler for that, because I just think that is incredible. But yeah, just little things like that were great. I love another example of this is I love how they showed the jam session in like that displaced realm where we were getting music throughout all of the years, all of the instances of music, and it also told that like historical lesson behind it, because if you know and this is what's so cool about the movie, there's so many little just signs there, but what it kind of went through was going from blues into more or less the black musical experience up until today. Even something that's been kind of a frustrating topic for a lot of people, but has been something that is for the most part by any rock musician. Rock was recognized as being also in that kind of journey through the black musical experience, and I thought that that was really really cool to kind of get that in there as well. But how when we get that displaced realm, it shows us instances of today where the film is primarily focused in a time setting that's like around like the 40s or 50s, maybe that's accurate. I'm not sure if I got the time exactly right, but somewhere around there. um yeah, what I love is that we get the instances of what people like people today and people dancing and whatnot, and then when the movie transitions into that point at towards the end of the film, I thought that that was also really 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 cool because it's like, okay, well, that transition didn't feel as weird or as abnormal to everything else that happened in the film because we had that jam session scene with everything, with all of the different eras being shown and expressed. So I thought that that was that. I like that. I love that it was able to be there. I'm not sure if I've seen that has been done before, but I'm not sure if I've seen that done as smooth as it was here. And I personally really applaud that. That was something where I was like, wow, that's really cool because it didn't feel weird. Even though we jumped from way back in the 40s, 50s, or whenever the time period is to today, you didn't it didn't feel like a new chapter to the movie or like a separation from the movie. It was something that fit pretty well in my eyes. Um, Outside of that, I just loved how in terms of the actual story, it was just a horror. It was a horror movie. It was just a horror movie. There was scenes of horror, but regardless of the thrill coming from specifically a horrifying scene, um, or if the thrill was just coming from the narrative itself, I thought that that was awesome as well. Just no matter what, everything is gonna be thrilling, but there's also gonna be elements of horror. Even the musical bits, everything like that. It was a thrill behind it. So I really do love. I thought it was a very clever how all of that ran together. In regards to like the cinematography, I know that they did a lot of different things for, especially with this film being centered around a primarily black cast, and lighting with black cast can be a little tricky at times. At least that's what Hollywood has led us to believe at this point. Having the cinematographer that they had, I didn't think that it was terrible. I thought that it was great in regards to trying to balance the two, especially balancing black at night, but then you also had white characters, you also had Asian characters. So it's like making sure that you're doing this well enough for all three different shades that kind of take place in a film. I thought for the most part they did a good job with this. I do wish that there was some instances, and I don't know whether it again. I'm only have one playthrough of the film, so I'm not exactly sure, but I don't know if the shading that we saw where even during daylight scenes where it would have what typically, like, anybody who's ever jumped on a camera that's watching this knows exactly what I mean. When I record podcasts, this happens to me a lot. Where I go to record, and because of my skin tone, it kind of makes half of my face a shadow. I saw instances of this here, and I don't know, and I know that that's a lighting issue. You can simply correct that with proper lighting. In fact, I'm still trying to get proper lighting for when we do our podcast because of this. So I know that it is something that is like can be fixed just with proper lighting, but I don't know if that was on purpose or if there was lighting limitations. But that was the only real critique that I could have that isn't as positive about the cinematography. I still think that it was ultimately for the most part really good. I The shots and everything, nothing was superb, but why does that have to be the case? If you have so many different areas of a movie that's really really good, why do I need to have these fantastic unique shots and such? I can just have regular shots and a great story and still get a great movie, and I think that this was an example of that. The special effects as well though were very good. Good in terms of that side. I personally really enjoyed the special effects. I thought that the jam session was done very beautifully. I love the vibrant colors. I love how those colors kind of go back to anybody that's ever seen. And they even played on this for people who aren't familiar. One of the movie posters for Sinners feature a black art style where they had a lot of art that kind of came out, and anybody that's black has had this in their home or had an auntie that had this in their home. Um, but there's this like bright colors. It like uses a lot of reds and yellows and oranges and blues. But it's a jam session, the exact same type of jam session that you would see that you saw in this movie, excuse me. But it'll be in a picture form, and it'll use these specific colors. And those colors are the same colors that were, for the most part, emulated throughout the entire um, jam session. And again, those colors are heavy in red, heavy in yellows, heavy in blues. Those are primarily the three that are that those pictures typically draw on. So being able to see that part incorporated through the special effects was absolutely incredible, and such a small detail, but such a great detail to add to the movie. I really, really loved that. Again, I don't have much negative to say about this movie. I thought that all of it was really good. The acting was fine. Again, I always say, and this is where Sage, shout out to Sage, but Sage and I get into a lot of back and forths in regards to this. But my rule is, if you have a really good story, you can kind of go far with that, and you don't necessarily need the best of best acting. I have this video set up so that way it'll just kind of go over to when and kind of give me a warning because I talk a lot. But again, I thought Sinners was great, solid acting. I thought it was ironic that Thunderbolts came out around the same time and they had those eyes. But I do give it 4.5 dab dogs. So 4.5 dab dogs for Sinners. Thought it was a great movie. 4.5 out of 5 dab dogs if you want. But now moving on here, we're gonna jump over to Warfare. I'm not gonna have as much to say about Warfare, but I do want to kind of talk on Warfare a little bit. I just saw this movie as well, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was great. I love war movies. This was more than a war movie though. At points during this film, I was really sitting there thinking like, okay, is this a documentary? Because but I know it wasn't a documentary. But I mean, they when they made this movie, they said their goal was to set out to make the most accurate war movie that you possibly could, and this is by far the most accurate war movie, and probably next to 1912. I don't know if I would put this over 1912 for me personally, but right next to 1912, this is one of my favorite war movies of all time. I absolutely loved it. Again, just like with Sinners, it was very thrilling throughout the entire movie. And that meant a lot to me. I just love thrillers. I love action thrillers. I love horror thrillers. I love thrillers, just not normal thrillers, psychological thrillers, whatever the case may be. I'm just really a big fan of thrillers. So, for us to get kind of like an action thriller here, for them to have everything set up the way that they did, in terms, what I love too is it's war. When you're in the heat of war, there is a lot of communication that needs to happen. There's a lot of communication between the soldiers, but also between the command base, right? Like, these are just things that we know about war. But what the part that was so great about this movie is, even though they were having dialogue, and a movie is supposed to have dialogue. In typically movies are supposed to have dialogue, unless we go back to like silent films. But in the modern movie, there's dialogue. But what was cool is they used dialogue in a way where it wasn't just something that you saw them communicating between each other with. There would just be whole scenes, whole instances where the dialogue was simply between the soldier and command base, and you may have gotten a lot of information in that one scene, and then they might have an action scene that happens in between that, and then they have a scene where the dialogue is with who is actually in frame. At least every actor that's involved in the dialogue is shown in that frame. But it kind of dances between these three things, and I thought that was cool because it still pushed forward like a movie would. But at the same time, as much as it was pushing forward and telling a cinematic story, it was also pushing forward and just replicating what you would expect to see during a battle or skirmish in war. And it just was really was captivating for me because it kept confusing me. Like, even though I knew it was a movie, there was times where like if it cut out, I would be like, okay, did the movie just end and like this is something, this is an error of some sort? Like what is going on? But it was just simply them saying, hey, no, we need to show you every aspect of how these battles and such would go. And that's the thing about war as well, is war is one of those things that is so incredible in regards to the events and things that happen, that you will oftentimes paint them as being something out of a movie. And this event, which is a true story, it was 100% a true story told as a war rendition, essentially. um it 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 was amazing to think that something like that happened in real life. It blew my mind. I'm not gonna give as much spoilers here. I don't want to have as much as long and as critical of a review with Warfare as I did for Sinners, so you don't have to worry about any spoilers or anything here. But what I will say is one of the characters in the movie was a person from the mission who didn't have really a memory of that battle or skirmish that happened that the movie is based around. And when they made this movie, they wanted to make the movie to either help jog this soldier who doesn't have memory of this battle's mind, or they wanted to just kind of paint the picture of exactly what happened, like just straight up, since this soldier didn't have any recollection of it. And so that was one of the reasons and the inspiration as to why they wanted it to be so accurate in regards to how the film was made, and for it to really feel like a war mission more so than a movie. And I mean, I think they just did a really good job, not only of that, but I feel like of both. I've seen movies that haven't been based on battles, war movies that haven't been based on battles, excuse me, that have had similar feels to the things happening in this movie. But that's very odd because, again, this movie is straight up a one, as close to a 1-to-1 as you possibly could have for the battle. So yes, maybe those movies that I saw in the past, definitely those movies that I've seen in the past, have just emulated. They've had real people come in to help them with the script and with the direction and everything of the sorts in regards to trying to get it as close to war as possible. So of course, some of the things that I'll see in past movies that aren't based on battles, yes, they have notes in order to get them to the point where it feels like a real battle. But to actually see how those things that I've seen in previous movies play out in something that's being made to be at a 1-to-1 with the actual war battle, it was very interesting. I just really, really enjoyed that. It's definitely a movie that I would recommend for anybody to go see. It 100% had it 100% had just a level of fly on the wall that I've seen before again, but that I don't think that I've seen quite like this. And Saving Private Ryan, there's a lot of different movies that really kind of do a great job with that, but the way that this movie did it, it was just a fly on the wall in just such a completely different way. I didn't know who I was watching the movie. Like, I'm like, am I the person that's in the next room, or like it was almost uncomfortable. It was almost uncomfortable watching it. I mean, I really appreciate them for making it like that, because if you really are in a room where war is taking place and there's different elements of war that are taking place in front of your very eyes, you're going to feel very uncomfortable. And everybody in that movie did a great job of expressing that uncomfortability for the situation that they were in. But to be able to bring me into to that same world, to that same realm, in that heavy of a way, I thought that was very interesting. And in a way, this movie kind of plays on on your psychological standing in terms of how you are typically with watching a movie. It removes you from the typical moviegoer experience and puts you in a very uncomfortable experience. One that, again, still maintains a cinematic thrill to it, but is one that is uncomfortable in a new way that you aren't necessarily used to experiencing when watching a film. So I thought that was pretty incredible as well. Um, it just overall, it was just a really good film. In terms of things like cinematics, some shots I thought could have maybe been at a different angle or perspective, but it was forgiving because of how good everything was overall with the movie. It's very forgiving. In terms of the acting was great. It was absolutely phenomenal. Um, in regards to script and everything like that, again, if you wanted to see what a war mission would be like, 100% the case here. This movie gives you that, and the scripting is a 1-to-1, pretty much 1-to-1 to uh that. Warfare, really great movie. I give it 4 dog dabs out of 5. Um yeah, highly recommend this movie as well. Sinners and Warfare, highly recommend these movies. 2 really good movies that came out this year. Really nice to be able to see that as well, just to kind of get that, earlier. And because both of these movies came out earlier in the year, to be able to get that early in the year is pretty nice, and it makes me look forward to not only the movies that we get during the summer, but also some of the movies that might be sleepers in the fall and in the winter of this year. Yeah, definitely recommend Warfare. Definitely recommend it. Um, great feelings in regards to both of these movies, in that sense of thrill. It's hard to really thrill me too because I watch a lot of movies, but yeah, it was great with both of those. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Again, you can check this video out on Croco's Corner, or you can also check this video out on Squad Nero podcast YouTube channel. The boys again are down in DreamCon. We will be back with more content for you guys, more podcasts for you guys as these guys get back. I hope that they had a wonderful time, and we thank you just for sticking around with us, being there with us, and we want to also say that you can check out our podcast on an audio note, just on all of the major streaming platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify. You can check us out there. Just look for Croco's Corner. You will be able to find all of the Squad Nero podcast recordings there for just a audio experience, if that is what you are looking for. Please make sure, guys, as always, that you like and subscribe our pages. Again, please like and subscribe to Croco's Corner, and please also like and subscribe to Squad Nero podcast. Additionally, if you are a streamer, please go visit Smooth Entertainment over at twitch.tv. That is also another place where you can get a live view of our podcast outside of on YouTube. So make sure you check that out. T Smooth, who is the owner of Smooth Entertainment, where we host that, has a lot of streaming content that he's always dropping. He more than likely will have some more coming for you guys in the very near future. So please be on the lookout for that. Thank you guys as always. Again, thank you for just joining us for this experience and being able to share in this content with us. And that's all that I got, guys. Thank you so much.